My parents always said family comes first. For 28 years, I believed them completely. Every month, I'd transfer $2,000 from my account to theirs, no questions asked. Every weekend, I'd drive 40 minutes to their house, armed with cleaning supplies and groceries, ready to transform their chaos into order. I thought this was love. I thought this was what good daughters do. My name is Teresa Nguyen, and I was the family ATM who didn't even know it. The pattern started so gradually I never noticed. In college, it was just help with your sister's textbooks, 300 here, 500 there. After graduation, it became just until we get back on our feet. Except their feet never quite found solid ground. By my late 20s, I was essentially funding their lifestyle while living in a studio apartment, convincing myself that family sacrifice was noble. The psychological conditioning ran deeper than money, though. Every family gathering, I was the one in the kitchen, while Amy, my younger sister, entertained guests in the living room. Every holiday, I was the coordinator, the cleaner, the silent servant who made everything look effortless. When relatives complimented the food, Mom would smile and accept praise for meals I'd spent hours preparing. But here's what I didn't understand about toxic family dynamics. The golden child and scapegoat roles aren't fixed, they're strategic. Amy got the praise, the support, the encouragement to follow her dreams as a part-time yoga instructor. I got the responsibility, the expectations, the guilt-laden phone calls about family emergencies that always seemed to require exactly the amount in my checking account. The warning signs were everywhere, but I'd been trained since childhood to ignore them. When I got my first promotion to senior analyst, earning more in a month than most people my age, Mom's response was, "That's nice, honey. Can you help your sister with her rent this month?" When I bought my first car, a practical Honda, nothing flashy, Dad's comment was, "Must be nice to have money to waste," while your parents drive a 15-year-old Toyota. The gaslighting was so subtle, I thought it was love. "You're so good with money," they'd say, which really meant you're responsible for our financial problems. "You don't need much to be happy," they'd insist, which translated to, "Your needs don't matter as much as ours." "Family is everything," they'd repeat, while treating me like everything was expected and nothing was appreciated. I developed what psychologists call people-pleasing behaviors, though I just thought of it as being considerate. I couldn't say no to family requests without feeling crushing guilt. I couldn't enjoy my own success without wondering if I should be sharing more. I couldn't set boundaries without hearing Mom's voice in my head. "After everything we've done for you..." The identity confusion was the worst part. I defined myself entirely through my usefulness to others. My worth was measured in dollars transferred, hours spent cleaning, crises solved, and expectations met. I had lost myself so completely in the role of family fixer that I couldn't even remember what I wanted from life anymore. Looking back, the red flags were neon bright, but trauma bonding is a powerful thing. Every rare moment of genuine appreciation, like Dad saying thank you after I fixed his computer, or Mom hugging me after I'd handled some family crisis, felt like proof that the system was working. These tiny breadcrumbs of affection kept me invested in a dynamic that was slowly destroying me. But even the most patient person has a breaking point. Mine came on December 23rd at 11:30 p.m. when I was putting the finishing touches on the quarterly report that would change everything. 7 warning signs I wish I'd recognized sooner. Signs that 89% of family exploitation victims never see coming. First, the financial manipulation pattern. Every family emergency mysteriously matched my available funds. Mom had an uncanny ability to know exactly when I got paid and exactly how much I had saved. The timing was never coincidental. Second, the emotional blackmail technique. "You don't love us anymore," became the standard response to any hesitation on my part. Saying no to any request, no matter how unreasonable, was immediately reframed as proof of my selfishness or lack of family loyalty. Third, the gaslighting about family history. "You're remembering wrong" became Mom's favorite phrase whenever I'd bring up past promises or patterns of behavior. My memory, my perception, my understanding of events, all were constantly questioned until I stopped trusting my own experiences. Fourth, the information control. I discovered much later that there was a family group chat I'd never been added to. While I was planning family gatherings and coordinating logistics, they were discussing me, my finances, and their strategies for getting what they needed. I was simultaneously essential and excluded. Fifth, the golden child comparison trap. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" was a constant refrain, despite the fact that Amy worked part-time by choice while I was climbing the corporate ladder. My achievements were minimized while her lifestyle choices were celebrated, creating a dynamic where success was punished and dependency was rewarded. Sixth, the isolation tactics disguised as protection. Every time I started dating someone, suddenly there were family crises that required my immediate attention. "Men just want your money anyway," Mom would say, effectively sabotaging relationships before they could provide me with emotional support outside the family system. Seventh, and most insidious, the service expectation without gratitude. I wasn't just helping the family, I was the hired help who happened to share DNA. Every contribution was expected, never appreciated. Every effort was assumed, never acknowledged. I had become so thoroughly useful that my humanity had disappeared. The psychological impact of these patterns was devastating, though I couldn't see it at the time. I had developed what therapists call chronic self-doubt, constantly questioning whether my needs were legitimate, whether my feelings were valid, whether I deserved the success I was working so hard to achieve. My boundary-setting abilities had been systematically destroyed. Every attempt to protect my time, energy, or resources was met with such intense emotional manipulation that it became easier to just give in. I was trapped in a cycle where standing up for myself felt like cruelty, and being cruel to family felt impossible. The people-pleasing behaviors extended far beyond family into every area of my life. At work, I took on extra projects without additional compensation. In friendships, I was always the one organizing, paying, accommodating. In dating, I attracted partners who saw me as conveniently low maintenance, a woman who wouldn't ask for much because I'd been trained to expect so little. But December 23rd changed everything. The phone rang at 11:30 p.m., just as I was reviewing the Henderson account proposal one final time. The deal that would make my career, the presentation that would prove I belonged in the executive suite, the work that represented everything I'd sacrificed for, including countless family obligations that had kept me at the office until midnight most of that month. "Teresa," Mom's voice was casual, like she was ordering pizza. Tomorrow Amy's bringing her friends over for Christmas dinner. Just 25 people. You'll handle the cooking, right? Not a request, not a discussion, an assumption. 25 people, Christmas Day, no advance notice, no consideration for my plans, my preparation time, my life outside their convenience. I was thinking prime rib, she continued, oblivious to my silence. And that potato dish you made last Easter. Oh, and Amy's friend Jessica is vegetarian now, so maybe prepare something special for her too. My hands started shaking, not from anger yet. That would come later, from recognition. This was the pattern distilled to its essence. My time, my skills, my resources, deployed at their convenience, for their benefit, without my consent. The night of December 23rd was my breaking point, but not in the way you might expect. I didn't explode, I didn't cry, I didn't even argue. Instead, something cold and clear settled over me, like a blanket made of pure clarity. Okay, Mom, I said quietly, I'll handle it. And for the first time in 28 years, I meant something completely different than what she thought I meant. The next 24 hours would be the most strategically decisive of my life. Instead of panicking about menu planning and grocery shopping, I opened my laptop and made different plans entirely. At 6 a.m. on Christmas Eve, I booked a flight to Miami, departing Christmas morning at dawn. By 9 a.m., I'd sent an email to HR requesting emergency vacation days. By noon, I'd called a cleaning service to deep clean the house, not for the party preparation Mom expected, but for the statement I was about to make. The transformation from victim to strategist wasn't emotional, it was mathematical. For years, I'd been solving everyone else's problems, while neglecting the biggest problem of all. A family system that had turned love into labor and daughter into servant. I spent Christmas Eve in a strange state of calm productivity. I cleaned out my refrigerator, leaving it sparkling and empty. I organized the house beautifully, creating the perfect backdrop for what was about to unfold. I packed a single suitcase with resort wear I'd bought, but never had time to use. Tags still on designer pieces, bought with money that used to go straight to family obligations. The psychological shift was profound. For the first time in my adult life, I was making plans that prioritized my well-being over their convenience. The guilt I expected never came. Instead, there was something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation. At midnight on Christmas Eve, as I set my alarm for 4 a.m., I realized that tomorrow wouldn't just be Christmas morning. It would be the first day of the rest of my life. Christmas morning, 7 a.m. Amy's friends began arriving at my parents' house, expecting the feast of a lifetime. Instead, they found Mrs. Nguyen standing in a pristine, empty kitchen, staring at a spotless refrigerator that contained nothing but condiments and leftover takeout containers. Meanwhile, I was 30,000 feet above Georgia, sipping mimosas in first class, watching the sunrise paint the clouds gold. My phone was buzzing with increasingly frantic calls and texts, all going straight to voicemail. The emergency that wasn't my emergency was finally someone else's problem to solve. But the real plot twist was still coming. At 3 p.m. Eastern, as I was checking into my oceanfront suite at the Four Seasons Miami, my phone rang with a call that would redefine everything. My boss, CEO James Morrison, calling personally to deliver news that would shatter every assumption my family had ever made about my life. Teresa, His voice was warm with genuine excitement. "I know you're on vacation, but I couldn't wait until Monday to tell you. The board approved your promotion to Vice President of Operations. The package includes base salary of $350,000, performance bonus potential of $100,000, and equity options that could set you up for life." He paused, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "You've earned this, boss. Enjoy your well-deserved break." Boss. He called me boss. While 25 people were sitting in my parents' living room, wondering where the Christmas dinner was, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company was congratulating me on becoming one of the youngest VPs in company history. The irony was perfect and devastating. The family that treated me like hired help had no idea I was about to become someone else's boss. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but social media makes it possible to serve it in real time to a global audience. By 6 p.m. Christmas Day, as the Miami sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, I was ready to show my family and everyone who knew us exactly what their servant had been up to. The Instagram story sequence was carefully crafted, each post designed to tell a story without saying too much. First, a photo of the Miami Beach sunset from my hotel balcony, captioned simple and elegant. "Sometimes you need distance to see clearly." Within minutes, the views started climbing. Extended family members, family friends, even some of Amy's friends who followed me, all seeing that Teresa Nguyen was definitely not in the kitchen. The second story was more pointed, a picture of room service arriving at my suite, featuring lobster thermidor and champagne with the caption, "When you stop being everyone's chef." The message was subtle but clear. I wasn't just absent from Christmas dinner, I was dining better than anyone at that chaotic gathering back home. Story 3 escalated beautifully. A selfie by the infinity pool, Miami skyline glittering behind me, wearing a designer swimsuit that cost more than most people's Christmas budget. Caption: "Learning to be served instead of serving." The comments started immediately. Cousins asking, "Where are you?" College friends responding with fire emojis and queen behavior. The fourth story was my masterpiece, a simple photo of my phone screen showing a text thread, with the sender's name blurred out, but the message clearly visible. "Teresa, you're exactly where you need to be. Merry Christmas." It was actually a text I'd sent to myself, but the implication was perfect. Someone important supported my decision. But the final story was the nuclear option, a screenshot of a text message with the sender's name obscured but the content crystal clear. "Congratulations on the VP promotion, boss. You've earned this." The timestamp showed Christmas Day, 3:47 p.m. The message was real, from CEO Morrison's personal phone. The family group chat I'd never been included in was apparently exploding, according to cousin Sarah, who'd started texting me privately. "Your mom is freaking out," she wrote. "She's calling you dramatic and ungrateful, but honestly, half the family is saying it's about time someone stood up to them." The psychological warfare was working exactly as intended. By posting at peak Christmas engagement time, maximum family and friends would see my content. The carefully curated images told a story of success, independence, and strategic planning, the opposite of the impulsive, ungrateful daughter narrative my parents were probably spinning. My phone buzzed constantly with private messages, extended family members reaching out, some confused, others supportive. Amy's college friends sliding into my DMs with messages like, "I always wondered why you seemed stressed at family gatherings," and "Your sister never mentioned you were so successful." The beauty of social media revenge is its permanence and reach. Unlike a screaming match that ends when voices get tired, these posts would exist forever. Every family friend, every extended relative, every professional contact who followed me would see that Teresa Nguyen was living her best life on Christmas Day, while her family dealt with the consequences of taking her for granted. But the real turning point came the next morning when my phone rang with a number I recognized but rarely heard from. Aunt Linda, Dad's older sister, calling from California. "Teresa, honey," her voice was concerned, but not accusatory. "What's really going on? Your mother called me crying about how you abandoned the family on Christmas, but your Instagram stories tell a very different story." For the first time in years, someone was asking for my side, not assuming I was wrong, not immediately taking my parents' version as truth, but actually wanting to understand what had happened from my perspective. "Aunt Linda," I said, settling into a poolside chair with my coffee, "how long do you have? Because there's a lot you don't know." The conversation lasted 2 hours. I told her everything: the monthly financial transfers, the unpaid labor, the emotional manipulation, the complete lack of consideration for my time or plans. I explained how Christmas had been the final straw. 25 people, no notice, complete assumption that I'd handle everything while Amy played hostess. "My God," Aunt Linda said when I finished, "I had no idea it was this bad. I knew you were generous with the family, but I thought that was your choice, not their expectation." She paused, processing everything I'd shared. "Teresa, your grandfather would be rolling over in his grave if he knew his son was treating his daughter like hired help. We raised your father better than this." The validation was overwhelming. For the first time in my adult life, a family member was acknowledging that the dynamic wasn't normal, wasn't healthy, and wasn't my fault. "There's something else you should know," she continued. "I called your Uncle Mike after your mom's dramatics yesterday. He said he's noticed the imbalance at family gatherings for years, but thought it wasn't his place to interfere. We've all seen how they treat you versus Amy, but we assumed you were okay with it because you never complained." That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time it was the call that would change everything. Grandmother Nguyen, 82 years old, and sharp as a tack, requesting a FaceTime conversation. Teresa, her face filled my phone screen, her expression serious but kind. "Your aunt told me what's been happening. I want to hear it from you directly." Grandmother had immigrated from Vietnam with nothing, built a successful restaurant business, and raised 5 children who all became productive adults. Her opinion carried weight in our family like no one else's. I told her the same story I'd shared with Aunt Linda, but Grandmother's reaction was different. Instead of surprise, I saw recognition in her eyes. "Your father was like Amy when he was young," she said quietly. "Always expecting others to take care of him, always assuming someone else would handle the work. I spoiled him because he was my baby, and I see now that I did him no favors." She leaned closer to the camera. "But you, Teresa, you remind me of myself at your age. Strong, capable, too generous for your own good. The difference is, I learned to set boundaries before people could take advantage. You're learning now, and that's okay. Better late than never." Do I have your blessing to protect myself? I asked, needing to hear it explicitly. Child, she said firmly, you have my blessing to save this family from itself. Sometimes the only way to teach people to value something is to take it away. The extended family network was mobilizing in ways I'd never expected. Uncle Mike called that evening, sharing that he'd observed the family dynamics for years and had always been uncomfortable with how they treated me. Cousin Sarah admitted she'd started setting boundaries with her own parents after watching my Instagram stories inspired by my example. The information flow had completely reversed. Instead of my parents controlling the narrative and painting me as the ungrateful daughter, extended family members were hearing the truth directly from me. The family reputation they'd built, successful parents with 2 daughters, one responsible and one creative, was crumbling as people realized the responsible daughter had been subsidizing everyone else's lifestyle. When I shared the financial reality with Aunt Linda, that I'd been transferring $24,000 annually to parents whose house was paid off and who had no genuine financial emergencies, she was stunned. Teresa, that's more than many people make in a year, and you've been doing this while living in a studio apartment? The contrast was stark when laid out clearly. I was earning in the top 5% for my age group, living like I earned half that amount. Also, my parents could maintain a lifestyle they couldn't actually afford, and Amy could pursue her dreams without financial pressure. But I wasn't done yet. The social media posts had been phase 1. The extended family conversations were phase 2. Phase 3 would be the most decisive. Establishing permanent boundaries through clear professional communication. On January 2nd, I returned to Miami. I'd extended my vacation by 3 days using the comp time I'd accumulated, sat in my newly upgraded first-class seat, and drafted the email that would change our family forever. The subject line was simple. Moving forward, new year, new relationship terms. The tone was business professional, not emotional. I'd learned from years of corporate negotiations that emotion weakens your position, while clear consequences strengthen it. Dear family, I began, I love you all and want to maintain healthy relationships with each of you. However, our current dynamic has become unsustainable and requires immediate adjustment. I outlined specific boundary changes, no more automatic monthly transfers. Emergency help would require documentation of actual need and advanced discussion. No more unpaid labor disguised as family contribution. If they needed catering or cleaning services, they could hire professionals like everyone else. Advance notice required for any requests involving my time, 48 hours minimum, with my right to decline based on my schedule and priorities. The email specified consequences. Boundary violations would result in temporary no-contact periods, escalating with each offense. I wasn't threatening to cut them off permanently, but I was establishing that their behavior had consequences that affected their access to me. Most importantly, I offered a path forward, healthy relationships based on mutual respect, where family support flowed both ways and everyone's time and resources were valued equally. The responses came within hours. Mom's was predictable. A guilt-laden phone call I didn't answer, followed by a series of texts about how I was tearing the family apart and choosing money over love. Dad's email was defensive, claiming I was being unreasonable and overreacting to one Christmas dinner. Amy's response surprised me. Instead of taking sides, she asked if we could talk privately. When we FaceTimed that evening, she looked genuinely shaken. "Teresa, I never realized how much you were doing," she said. "I mean, I knew you helped out financially, but I thought that was because you wanted to, not because they expected it. Amy, when was the last time they asked you to contribute anything to family expenses?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Never. They've never asked me for money or made me feel responsible for family problems." "That's because they had me," I said gently. "I became the family ATM so you could be the family artist. I don't resent you for that, but I can't do it anymore." The conversation continued for an hour. Amy admitted that she'd benefited from the dynamic without questioning it, that she'd assumed I enjoyed taking care of everyone because I was naturally responsible. She also revealed something I hadn't known. My parents had been discussing my selfishness in the family group chat for months, building a case against me that painted my perfectly reasonable requests for advance notice and occasional personal time as evidence of changing priorities and weakening family loyalty. "I want to be a better sister," Amy said finally, "and if I'm going to get married and have kids someday, I need to learn how to have healthy boundaries too. Can you teach me?" The real test of my new boundaries came in March, when Mom called at 2 a.m. crying about a medical emergency. Dad was in the hospital, she claimed, and they needed $8,000 immediately for surgery. Old Teresa would have panicked, driven to the hospital, and handed over her credit card without question. New Teresa said, "I'll be there in 2 hours," and drove to the hospital, prepared to help appropriately, not blindly. The reality was exactly what I'd suspected. Dad was having routine gallbladder surgery, covered 80% by insurance, with an actual out-of-pocket cost of $1,200. The $8,000 figure was pure manipulation, designed to trigger my old patterns of panic giving. In the hospital waiting room at 6 a.m., with extended family members present as witnesses, I had the most honest conversation our family had ever experienced. "Dad's surgery costs $100 out of pocket," I said calmly, showing them the insurance breakdown I'd obtained from the billing office. "I'm happy to pay that directly to the hospital." "But what if there are complications?" Mom protested. "Then we'll handle actual bills if they arise, not imaginary ones." "You're being cold to your own father," Dad said from his hospital bed, groggy from pre-surgery medication. "I'm being rational with someone I love. You taught me to be responsible with money, remember?" I paid the $200 directly to the hospital, stayed for the surgery, brought Dad flowers and magazines during his recovery, and provided all the emotional support a daughter should. What I didn't do was hand over thousands of extra dollars for non-existent emergencies or take on medical decisions that belonged to his spouse. The family witnessed a new dynamic, Teresa and Nguyen helping appropriately, lovingly, and within reasonable boundaries. Dad's genuine gratitude for my presence, combined with Mom's inability to exploit the crisis for financial gain, shifted something fundamental in our relationships. Amy stepped up too, contributing to Dad's recovery costs and taking time off work to help with his care. For the first time in our adult lives, we were functioning as a family where everyone contributed according to their abilities, rather than a system where one person carried everyone else. By September, when Amy's engagement party arrived, the transformation was complete. I walked into my parents' backyard as an invited guest, not the event coordinator. The catering was professionally handled, the decorations were beautiful, and for the first time at a family gathering, I was free to enjoy myself. The social dynamics had shifted completely. Family friends who used to barely acknowledge me were asking about my career achievements. Amy introduced me to her fiancé as her incredibly successful VP sister. My parents spoke about my accomplishments with pride rather than minimizing them. I brought Marcus, the executive I'd been dating for 8 months, and watched my parents treat him with the respect they'd never shown my previous boyfriends. No interrogation, no subtle discouragement, no manufactured crises to pull my attention away from my relationship. The most meaningful moment came during party cleanup when I voluntarily helped in the kitchen, not because it was expected, but because I wanted to. Mom and I worked side by side, and for the first time in years, it felt like a mother and daughter spending time together rather than an employer and employee. "I was wrong to take advantage," she said quietly, handing me a dish to dry. "We're building something better now," I replied, and meant it. Amy's wedding planning became a masterclass in healthy family dynamics. Instead of assuming I'd handle everything, she asked for specific help with specific tasks. Instead of expecting free labor, she budgeted for the services she needed. Instead of taking my contributions for granted, she expressed genuine gratitude for my support. As the evening wound down, Dad asked for a private conversation on the front porch. The sunset was painting the sky in soft pastels, and for the first time in my adult life, my father looked at me with unqualified respect. "Teresa, I owe you an apology," he began. "I taught you to give everything and ask for nothing. That wasn't love, that was convenience. You deserved better from your parents." "Dad, we both learned from this," I said. "You raised a daughter strong enough to stand up for herself. That's actually good parenting in the end." He told me about his own childhood, how he'd been the family scapegoat, and had unconsciously repeated the pattern with me. The conversation lasted until the stars came out, 2 adults finally seeing each other clearly. 6 months later, I stood in that same backyard for Amy's wedding, watching my sister marry a man who respected her boundaries because she'd learned to set them. My parents hosted beautifully, having learned to celebrate without exploiting. Extended family members who'd witnessed our transformation spoke about it as an inspiration for their own family dynamics. Marcus and I announced our engagement that day, and for the first time in my family's history, a couple was celebrated for their mutual success and respect, rather than judged for their independence. The woman who'd once been the family ATM had become the family example, proof that love without boundaries isn't love at all, and that sometimes the greatest gift you can give people is teaching them to value what they've been taking for granted. My father's final words that night captured everything. "You didn't lose a family, Teresa. You saved one." And as I looked around at the healthy, respectful, genuinely loving relationships we'd built from the ashes of our toxic patterns, I realized he was absolutely right. Breaking the cycle hadn't destroyed our family. It had finally given us the chance to become one.